Biden sternly criticizes Republicans while issuing a dire debt ceiling warning. In a sharp change of tone days before the deadline to reach an agreement, President Joe Biden issued a stern warning on Sunday that congressional Republicans could use a national default to harm him politically and acknowledged time had run out to use potential unilateral actions to raise the federal borrowing limit. Biden referred to GOP proposals as extreme and cautioned that they wouldn't have enough support in Congress, saying he couldn't guarantee that the US wouldn't default to the other international leaders gathered in Japan for Group of 7 discussions. He remarked, "I can't promise they won't precipitate a default by doing anything outrageous." The latest evidence that negotiations between the White House and congressional Republicans are still at a standstill was provided by Biden's statements, which he made before departing for Washington. After boarding Air Force One, he was scheduled to speak on the phone with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy. However, it was unclear whether that conversation would result in Republican demands for spending reductions in the federal budget in exchange for their support in raising the country's borrowing limit. On Sunday, Biden admitted that he and the Republicans have significant disagreements in some areas, but he insisted that while he is willing to cut spending, tax revenue is not off the table as a potential compromise. Later on Sunday, McCarthy disputed with that portrayal in an appearance with Fox News, claiming that Biden had previously told him that tax increases were off the table and that he wouldn't consent to them. The California Republican added, "He's now bringing something to the table that everyone said was off the table." It appears that he prefers to find fault over a solution. Biden stated during his news conference that a large portion of the Republican proposals is simply, quite frankly, unacceptable. Republicans need to realize that they cannot achieve a bipartisan agreement on their own partisan terms. They too must relocate, the president added. When questioned about whether he would be responsible for a default scenario, Biden responded that given what he had provided, he should be blameless, but acknowledged that no one will be blameless, as he hinted some of his political enemies may be supporting a default to undermine his re-election prospects. "I think there are some MAGA Republicans in the House who know the damage it would do to the economy, and because I am president, and a president is responsible for everything, Biden would take the blame, and that's the one way to make sure Biden's not re-elected," he claimed. McCarthy, in turn, attributed Biden's objectives in the talks to the socialist wing of the Democratic Party. "Every time Bernie Sanders holds a press conference, the president changes his positions." As the speaker arrived at the US Capitol in Washington on Sunday, he stated, "He becomes reactive and adjusts." As the G7 summit came to an end on Sunday, Biden's top national security advisor told CNN that the deadlocked debt ceiling and budget talks have not compromised American leadership internationally. "When you consider the entire last 3 days, it truly reflects and serves as an exclamation point for how President Biden has led on the international scene," National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan told CNN's Jake Tapper on State of the Union that people understand democracies and that there are times in domestic politics when it is necessary to consider the home front. Biden discusses the 14th Amendment argument's flaws. In his news conference, Biden discussed the potential for utilizing the 14th Amendment to prolong the US government's borrowing in the absence of an agreement. He suggested that while he has the authority, he does not currently have the time to take this measure. "I believe we have the power. Could it be done and invoked in a timely manner such that it could not, and would not be appealed?" Biden questioned, referring to the possibility of resolving an appeal prior to the standard period as unresolved. When questioned by CNN's Phil Mattingly about whether he thought he could invoke the 14th Amendment as a real and viable option, the president made it clear that move would not work given the limited time left. "We haven't thought of a unilateral approach that could be successful in just 2 or 3 weeks. The problem is that. Thus, lawmakers are responsible. But I'm hoping and intending to fix this," he stated. Senator Bill Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana, stated on Sunday that using the 14th Amendment might be a dodge. "The president must demonstrate leadership. Okay, House Republicans, if you're worried about spending and you're an American, I'll meet you there. Instead than trying to find a way around, find a dodge," Cassidy added. The US might begin defaulting on its debts as early as June, according to Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen. McCarthy had previously stated that until Biden returned to Washington, negotiations with the administration couldn't resume. The White House, regrettably, went backward, he remarked. I don't believe we will be able to proceed until the president is able to return. After the G7 conference in Hiroshima, Biden had initially intended to travel in Australia and Papua New Guinea. However, the debt ceiling negotiations caused him to postpone those portions of the trip. The two men would be having their first chat since debt talks looked to be stalling due to disagreements over spending caps, so Biden ordered his aides to work with the speaker to schedule the meeting for Sunday morning Eastern Time. One of the main negotiators in the debt ceiling negotiations, Republican Representative Patrick McHenry of North Carolina, said on Sunday that he was not at all hopeful that a solution can be reached. He told CNN, "I've been negative for a while, and something needs to change." Earlier on Saturday, South Dakota Republican Representative Dusty Johnson acknowledged that the White House had made a proposal to freeze future spending at the current level. Johnson referred to this proposal as unreasonable. Johnson, a McCarthy supporter and the leader of the moderate Main Street Caucus, is one of several important figures who have been receiving updates on the negotiations from Republican negotiators. The talks did not go well today, according to Johnson. The White House's paper represented a significant step backward. And it undid all advancement made on Wednesday and Thursday. It has put negotiations in jeopardy. Johnson stated that we are at real risk of default.